We're all familiar with the biblical passages that say women should not speak in church, or that their testimony is admissible in a court of law. We also know that Christian leaders are predominantly men and seem to have a monopoly on pastorship. This got me wondering, is Christianity made for men and not for women? Let's find out. So in this video, we're going to analyze this question from two perspectives. We're going to start with the biblical teachings. It's inarguable that throughout the Old Testament, sexism is supported, and there are a few passages that we can look at directly to prove this. The passage from Numbers 5 is a trial of jealousy. This passage is too long to read verbatim in this video, so I'm going to put the entire version of it down in the comment section below. In this passage, it shows that a man is able to convict a woman of a crime, the crime of cheating, without any evidence or witnesses. All the man needs is intuition. In other words, if the husband even has a thought that his wife is cheating, that's enough evidence to have her convicted and punished. It says in Numbers 5, if feelings of jealousy come over the husband and he suspects his wife and she is impure, or if he is jealous and suspects her even though she is not impure, he then is to take her to the priest. So now you're probably thinking, what is this punishment? It can't be too bad. Well, it is pretty dang bad. It's a freaking curse that makes it so that she's unable to reproduce and that her stomach swells. You might be saying, oh, that's the Old Testament. Those things don't really apply today. Well, we can look at the New Testament and see the same type of rhetoric. For example, in 1 Timothy, a woman should learn in quietness in full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over man. She must be silent. And then in 1 Peter, we have some pretty direct words here. And it says, pay honor to the woman as the weaker sex, though they're just defining her immediately as being inferior. These passages still to this day are used to argue against women's rights, and not just in church, but in society in general. Obviously, and for good reason, this perspective has become less and less popular throughout the years. But we can see that religion was absolutely used to favor men, whether it was not allowing women to vote or forcing women to stay in the house. So now if we look at the demographics of the biblical authors, we see something at least a little bit alarming. Almost every single author of the entire Bible is a man, except for maybe one in Hebrews that it could be a woman who wrote it, but people aren't really sure. So from this, I think that we can conclude that yes, Christianity and the Bible has been used in the past to favor men, and that the biblical text supports men over women. So I love my biology. What if I told you that I can reach this same conclusion without ever reading a word of the Bible? By just using the theory of evolution, we can get to this exact same conclusion that the Bible, that the Christian institution, this religion supports men, favors men over women. To illustrate this, we are going to look at the microcosm of society, which is marriage. We all know that Christianity has had a major influence on the institution of marriage here in the United States. In fact, it was the driving force behind why monogamy is the law. In this part of the video, I'm going to prove to you two things. One, humans are naturally polygamous organisms. And two, the Christian implementation of monogamy strictly favors men over women. So in order to determine whether or not an organism, specifically a primate, is monogamous or polygamous, there are three lines of evidence that we can look at. The general trend among primates is that when the male is significantly larger than the female, that species tends to be polygamous. This is because if only one singular male has all the reproductive opportunity, the other males are going to be competing, obviously, for that shot, and so size is going to be a massive advantage in that fight. So humans have a significant size discrepancy between men and women. It's not as severe as strictly polygamous organisms such as gorillas, but it's not nearly as even as the monogamous organisms like bonobos. The second line of evidence is a lack of estrus. Estrus is just a fancy term for being in heat. It's the preparation of the female body for fertilization with some kind of indicator to the males that she is not pregnant. This could be a visual indicator like the red butts of some monkeys, or this could be something more subtle like pheromones. Species that lack estrus are better able to conceal their pregnancy. This correlates with polygamous species, and the idea here is that the female has the ability to extract resources from a bunch of different males if she's able to hide the fact that she's pregnant or not. Another reason why estrus is important is it kind of gives the male an ability to determine whether or not the child is really his. And so human women, in this case, lack estrus. And so that is more in line with an organism that's polygamous than monogamous. The last line of evidence that scientists look at is testicular mass and semen concentration. Higher levels of both of these correlate with polygamy. The idea here is that if you are in a monogamous relationship, such as bonobos are, you're going to have multiple opportunities to get pregnant together. If not, you only really have one shot and you need to make that shot count. Before we get any further, I do want to emphasize here that I'm not supporting our society going back to polygamy, for example. There's our culture, our society is set up for monogamy. I have nothing wrong with monogamy. I'm not a polygamist myself. And so this is not the reason why I'm making this video. I'm making this video to help explain our own biology and how it informs our own religious institutions that we develop. Okay, so humans are naturally polygamous. So how does this exactly favor men? So let's say that society is polygamous. What can we expect? Well, we would expect a few males with the most resources at the top. We would expect them to have the most mates. Each extra mate that the male has, it takes one away from the male at the bottom of the social hierarchy. A good way of thinking about it is like the capitalism of marriage. It's kind of a free-for-all, and the accumulation of resources is going to end up at the top. So in this case, the least amount of men have the opportunity to pass on their genetic information. So this is not favorable to men. In this case, women get to have the highest value man that they can acquire. I know this sounds very animalistic, but again, we're theorizing about what a polygamous society would look like. And of course, we are animals. Now, looking at monogamy, it's more like the socialism of marriage. Marriage and the opportunity for marriage is spread across all of the organisms. So in this case, every single man has that opportunity to pass on his genetic information, but it comes at the cost of the woman. The women now don't have the opportunity to get the highest value male that they can acquire. Instead, they're kind of forced into a marriage with the lower end of that social hierarchy. This impacts women and makes it so that they have the least amount of resources for themselves and their children. So from a purely biological perspective, Christianity actually does favor men by allowing them to pass on more of their genetic information. So I know this theory sounds crazy. It was crazy when I first read it, but I'd highly recommend checking out Robert Wright's book. It's New York Times Best Book of the Year, The Moral Animal, for more information on this theory. With that being said, that's all I have for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe. Let's go.